Florence is getting a stadium worthy of its legacy, and it's costing 193 million euros. AC Fiorentina's new home blends modern architecture with deep cultural roots, transforming the iconic Stadio Artemio Franchi into a next-generation arena. We're taking you inside the full design, layout, and vision, and why this bold project is about more than football. It's about identity, pride, and the future of a historic club. Chapter 1: The Burden of History. Let's talk about what makes this project so incredibly complex. The Stadio Artemio Franchi isn't just any football ground. This place opened its doors back in 1931, and it was designed by Pierluigi Nervi, a man who revolutionized reinforced concrete architecture. We're talking about a stadium that features pillar-free cantilever roofs, iconic spiral ramps that look like something out of a futuristic movie, and the 70-meter-high Maratona Tower that dominates the Florence skyline. This isn't just a stadium, it's a protected historical monument. You can't just slap on a new coat of paint and call it a day. The original structure could hold over 43,000 fans, and for decades, it served as the beating heart of Florentine football. But time hasn't been kind to the old lady. The concrete has degraded. The facilities are outdated by modern standards. And here's something that'll surprise you. The entire region's seismic classification has changed over the years, meaning the stadium now sits in a zone that requires serious anti-seismic reinforcements. Try doing that without destroying what makes the place special in the first place. This is where the 193 million euro question comes in. How do you bring a nearly century-old icon into the 21st century without losing its soul? The city of Florence launched an international design competition, and after reviewing proposals from 8 shortlisted firms, they handed the keys to Arup, the global engineering giant responsible for some of the world's most ambitious stadium projects. Their chief designer, David Hirsch, was tasked with something that seems almost impossible on paper: preserve the historic structure completely, integrate it with cutting-edge modern design, and create a stadium experience that rivals anything being built from scratch elsewhere in Europe. No pressure, right? Chapter 2: The Blade That Changes Everything. So here's where things get really interesting. Arup's solution was to introduce what they call the blade. Imagine a thin, rectangular metal structure that hovers above the historic stands like a spacecraft landing in Renaissance Florence. This isn't your typical stadium roof. This thing is an architectural statement that completely transforms the venue while paying respect to what came before. The blade rises above the original stands, creating this incredible visual contrast between Nervi's brutalist concrete masterpiece and this sleek modern intervention. But here's the genius part. The shape and profile of this new roof were specifically designed to minimize its impact on the Florence skyline. You've got to remember, this city is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Every building, every structure has to consider its relationship with the Duomo, the Palazzo Vecchio, and centuries of architectural history. The blade celebrates the elegance and horizontality of Nervi's original design. It suspends and opens up near the iconic elements like the Torre di Maratona, creating these dramatic moments where old and new dance together rather than fight for attention. The spaces between the new stands and the curves of the current stadium become meeting points. Think of them as architectural handshakes between different eras. These areas will serve as interconnection zones between the public, the spectators, and citizens just passing through. This is where Arup really understood the assignment. They weren't just designing a football stadium. They were creating an urban experience that works 365 days a year, not just on match days. Stick around until the end to see how this stadium will actually produce more energy than it consumes and what that means for the future of sustainable sports architecture in historic cities. Chapter 3: The Renovation Challenge. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what's actually happening on site right now. This renovation is happening in phases, and here's the kicker. Fiorentina isn't moving out. They're playing through the entire construction process. Try explaining that to the project managers. In the first half of 2024, crews demolished the old reinforced concrete scoreboard and carried out structural reinforcement work on the steps of the Ferrovia stand. Starting from June, the construction site shifted to different areas, working around the team's fixtures like a surgical procedure performed on a patient who's still running marathons. The capacity has been temporarily reduced to around 22,000 seats during the construction phase. That's cutting the stadium by more than half its original size. For a Serie A club with European ambitions, that's a massive financial hit. But the alternative would have been to relocate to another city or build a temporary facility, both of which would cost even more and disconnect the club from its historic home. The plan is to have the upgraded facility completed by October 31st, 2026. That's a tight deadline for a project of this magnitude, especially when you factor in Italian bureaucracy, which is its own special kind of adventure. The renovation includes implementing comprehensive anti-seismic systems throughout the structure. This isn't optional. With the region's updated seismic classification and decades of material degradation, reinforcing the stadium against earthquakes became a fundamental requirement. The final capacity will settle at around 40,000 seats. That's a slight reduction from the original, but what you lose in numbers, you gain in experience. Every seat in the renovated stadium will offer better sightlines, improved access, and modern amenities. The pitch will sit just 7 meters from the fans in certain sections. That's close enough to feel the sweat fly off the players during a heated Derby della Toscana against Empoli. That intimacy is what makes football special. And it's something newer. Larger stadiums often sacrifice in pursuit of capacity numbers. Chapter 4. Sustainability meets innovation. Here's where this project separates itself from basically every other stadium renovation you've seen. The entire master plan was developed with sustainability at its core. And they're not just talking about recycling bins and LED lights. We're talking about achieving net zero carbon through an integrated energy and water management system that's frankly mind-blowing. The goal is to create a symbiotic relationship between the stadium, the surrounding Campo de Marte Park, and the other buildings in the master plan. This isn't a stadium that takes from the city. It's a stadium that gives back. That blade roof we talked about earlier, it's not just for show. The entire surface will be covered with photovoltaic panels that generate renewable energy. But here's the crazy part. The energy produced doesn't just power the stadium. It feeds into an innovative district energy system that serves the entire development and surrounding buildings. On non-match days, when the stadium's energy consumption drops, that power goes straight into the neighborhood grid. The stadium becomes a power plant that happens to host football matches. The roof also functions as a massive rainwater collection system. Florence gets plenty of rain throughout the year, and rather than letting it run off into the city's drainage system, the new design captures it. The water gets stored in underground tanks and then reused for irrigation of the park and other non-drinking purposes throughout the compound. In a world where water scarcity is becoming an increasing concern, even in Europe, this kind of closed-loop system represents the future of sustainable architecture. Chapter 5. What this means for stadium design. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about why this project matters beyond Florence. Across Europe, dozens of historic stadiums are facing the same dilemma. Do you demolish and start fresh, or do you renovate and preserve? For decades, the default answer has been to tear it down and build new. It's easier, it's faster, and it often makes more financial sense on paper. But we're losing something irreplaceable in that process. We're erasing the physical connection between clubs and their histories. The Artemio Franchi renovation proves there's another way. Yes, it's harder. Yes, it's more expensive in the short term. Yes, it requires architects and engineers to solve problems that wouldn't exist if you just bulldozed everything and started with a blank slate. But what you get in return is something that can't be replicated in a new build. You get layers of history, you get architectural dialogue between different eras. You get a building that tells a story rather than just hosting events. This project received 55 million euros in European Union funds precisely because it demonstrates what's possible through renovation and preservation. The remaining 138 million comes from national funding sources, though there's still ongoing discussion about how Fiorentina's ownership, led by Italian-American businessman Rocco Commisso, might contribute to covering costs. The financial structure reflects a shared belief that preserving architectural heritage while advancing sustainability isn't just culturally valuable. It's an investment in how we build our cities going forward. When you walk into the renovated Artemio Franchi in 2026, you'll see Nervi's concrete spirals leading you upward like they have for 95 years. But then you'll step into a modern concourse with contemporary facilities. You'll sit in a comfortable seat with perfect sightlines under a roof that's generating clean energy. You'll look up and see that blade hovering above, acknowledging the past while pointing toward the future. And if you're paying attention, you'll realize you're experiencing something that few stadiums can offer: the physical presence of nearly a century of football history, enhanced by the best of 21st century design and technology. If you made it to the end of the video, share your thoughts on this incredible stadium in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, click here to explore all UEFA Europa League stadiums 2025/2026. See you there in a second.